right, now before we get back into the episode, we've got a big announcement to make. We want to show some love to our first ever sponsor, Mykin. That's spelled Mykyn. Mykin is a high-end luxury eyewear brand focused on quality, craftsmanship, and timeless style. These aren't just glasses, y'all. They're statement pieces. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see I'm wearing an exclusive pair right now. Look at the style. I love the dark frames. Right now, you can get 25% off when you use our code GoodPeople25 at MykynBrand.com. Again, that's GoodPeople25 at MykynBrand.com. If you love Song of the Week, do us a favor, grab a pair. GoodPeople25 for 25% off. Big love to Mykyn for supporting Song of the Week. Let's get into the episode. Good people on the quest for good content. Welcome back to your favorite music podcast, the one and only Song of the Week. You got 2 weeks in a row of a little pick and roll offense. Jordan and David here for you today. David, my brother, what is happening?
All good, my guy. All is well, JB. Just doing what we do, man. Doing what we do, living life, trying to make things happen, trying to keep our head above water in the best way possible. And yeah, man, we're hanging in there. I'm excited because our songs of the week this week are kind of an interesting blend. And they're both kind of from an interesting time frame. They're kind of similar, I would say, in time that they came out in, but kind of very different in style and vibe. So I'm pumped. I'm pumped for Song of the Week this week. How are you doing, my dude? You always ask me how I'm doing, and then we just launch right into things. And I don't take the time to be like, how are you doing, my friend? How's it going?
My brother, I am good. Besides the fact that it's freezing in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's snow everywhere, I'm doing good. I've been listening to some good music. I've been listening to good podcasts. I'm ready for the snow to melt so I can go on my runs again. I really miss going on my runs and even walks. Like, I just miss being comfortable outside. That's the worst part of this time of year in Ohio, man, is it's just freezing.
For those that don't know, Jordan is a legendary runner and walker for that matter. Did you run was it a half marathon that you ran last year?
Yeah, legendary is, you're very kind. Legendary is a stretch. But yeah, I have run a half marathon. I want to run the Cleveland half in May. There's a Cleveland marathon coming up in May, but I'm like, I haven't been able to run because there's snow everywhere. So I'm in terrible shape right now. But yes, I have run a half. Eventually I'm going to make my way up to a full, but I'm just not there yet.
Well, you will. I believe in you. And if it makes you feel any better, I'm also in terrible shape, and I live in a place where there's sunshine year round, and I have every reason to run way more often than I do. So don't beat yourself up. And the sun will come up again. The snow will melt. I'm confident. But as you said, you're listening to some good music. You're listening to some podcasts. What's we're gonna get to your song of the week, but even before your song of the week, is there anything else that's been kind of percolating in the JB sphere?
Yeah. I actually want to give a shout out, bro, to your boy our boy, but I met him through you, Ryan, that was in your wedding or at the bachelor party at the very least. I can't remember if he was in the wedding party,
He
but
was.
Ryan, okay. But yeah, so Ryan hit me up the other day and we were just chatting and he got me hip to Lady Ray, who's very
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time I emailed her manager today and was like, we need to get her on the show. So hopefully by the time this comes out, we've started coordinating with her. So that's something that I've been listening to. Man, what else have I been listening to? I've been listening to Venna that we talked about on the last podcast with I think that one was just me and Bill. I've been listening to a lot of that. I'm pulling up. I've just been listening to Stevie Wonder. I just listened to Talking Book the other day. I actually think I posted that vinyl on our page the other day. So yeah, I've been listening to some good stuff, man. What about you? What have you been listening to?
Yeah, kind of a mix of stuff. Great shout. Obviously, shout out Ryan, one of the best people in the world. We love Ryan, friend of the channel, usher at the wedding, if memory serves.
Yes.
And Lady Ray is fantastic. If we are lucky enough to get her involved, Ryan will definitely be a part of that. Song "Piece of Me," which came out several years back, which I think is probably her biggest song. Man, great song. That thing hits. I love it, man. Those are great things. Yeah, I've been more I got a Kindle a few weeks back for the first time. I've been like a hard, physical book person my whole life, but I finally caved. So I've been reading a fair amount. I'm reading the book Atonement, which is very random, and there was a movie with Keira Knightley made about it a long time ago. Finally getting around to reading that. So I've been reading, listening to the podcast that I do, and as always, as my song of the week will reflect, a healthy dose of the old cuts and the things that I often return back to, because that's really kind of my musical flavors. I really will try things that I like and are interesting to me. I'm always open to new stuff, but when I'm in my default mode, I will often return back to the things that really speak to me. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of that recently, I would say.
Yeah. Speaking of reading, last time we talked, I had just kind of started Chuck Klosterman. I almost called him Chuck Knobloch. Chuck Klosterman's book, and I just read. He does this kind of chapter on not chapter, but there's a part of the chapter where he talks about Jerry Rice versus Randy Moss that I find super fascinating,
Interesting.
and kind of the differences of who they were as players. And he makes an interesting point, and I agree with him. Like, Randy Moss may be the most impressive physical specimen we've ever seen in the NFL, but Jerry Rice is the best receiver ever. Take with that what you may.
That's a great comp. Chuck Klosterman's the man. Makes sense why he's writing about cool, interesting stuff. I think there's a lot of interesting comparisons across sports that you could do with that Jerry Rice, like the archetypes of like Jerry Rice versus Moss. Like, to me, the one that jumped out immediately is like, I think what's become maybe like the basketball argument of our time, which is like MJ or LeBron. I don't know if it's not quite Jerry, Randy, but there's parallels there, I think, where it's like you have this like physical dominance who played the game and changed the game in what you can do physically with it versus like just technical perfection and sustained excellence over, you know, an insane amount of time, which again, LeBron's done that too. It's not a perfect comparison, but I think that's a really interesting archetype to look at.
Yeah, since we're in it now, who would you rather be? Would you rather be Jerry or would you rather be Randy? And let me frame that a little bit more. To me, what he's saying, and I agree with him, Jerry got 100% of his potential.
Hmm.
Jerry didn't leave anything on the table.
Hmm.
Randy probably got 85. Like, there was probably one more level that Randy could have gone to that he didn't get to because he was so talented he didn't have to work as hard as Jerry.
Yeah,
That's how I see it, and I agree with Chuck on that.
I think that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Is there one you would rather have, or is there a career, if you could look at your career in anything, which archetype would you rather follow?
Well, I think that that's true. Like those archetypes and how they break out for Jerry and Randy, I think it's true to a certain extent. Like, yes, Randy's physical, calling him Randy like we're buddies. Randy Moss, the physical tools and unquestioned, like unprecedented when he was doing his thing. And I think some of the inconsistency in his career can be attributed to like outside thing, like playing for one of the worst Raider teams ever, for a time. There are factors that kind of I think help explain
Yeah.
some of the inconsistency. But with that caveat said, when I was coaching sports and as I pursue my life, I certainly want to try and emulate the first model more, right? Where it's not that Jerry Rice wasn't talented, but if you're overlooked or for whatever reason, your talent isn't identified yet, or you haven't developed to the point where your talent is ready to showcase, working to get every little bit out of it is where happiness and satisfaction and success, usually lies, and generally relying on your talent is not a good plan. It's the super old adage of like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard or whatever, old school coaching adage you want to throw at the wall. But like, yeah, I think that in those two options, I like the Jerry Rice model. But I will say, if we're gonna go with the 85% analogy or comparison, that 85% was more exciting and probably sticks in people's minds more than any one thing that Jerry Rice ever did, in his career, and with exceptions, but I think by and large.
Is there a music parallel to that? Like, are there artists that you can think of that were the Jerry Rice? And it doesn't have to necessarily be hip hop, but are there artists that you look back on their career and say that they got everything out of their talent? And then are there artists that you look at and say they they were incredible and they didn't even quite get everything out of what they had out of that natural God given talent?
Oh man, that's hard. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a great question. I think in hip hop you have the tragic situation of like there's lots of people like that, but they didn't get there or explore that part of themselves because they were taken from the world.
Yeah, you have people that die, you have people that you wonder what they would have been able to do had they not died.
Right, and it's not like sports where it's like you didn't spend enough time in the gym, or you didn't treat your
Yeah.
diet the right way, or you weren't a good teammate. It's like I think music and creative stuff, it's just it's different, of course, but I've said this before on the channel, but like Mac Miller strikes me as someone who got every, and he's actually an example of both of the things we were just talking about, where he was both taken too soon from us, and I think he had a lot more to offer and a lot more to give and a lot more to explore in his creativity. But in the time that he had, he worked at it, like he really evolved his sound from what it started at into different directions, different parts of himself, different parts of his skill set. Um, like when you ask me just off the top of my head, he's definitely someone that jumps to mind as someone who like squeezed every bit out of his the talent rag, as it were. But I'll keep thinking about it. That's a good question. What
Yeah.
about you? Does anybody immediately jump to mind for you?
So the first one that jumps to mind as far as the Jerry Rice comparison. So when I think of Jerry Rice, I think of Jerry Rice was the perfect combination of talent and work ethic. It's not Jerry wasn't just good because he worked hard. Jerry was good because he was super talented and he worked hard. So the first one that comes to mind for me is J. Cole.
Yeah,
And you and I disagree a little bit on J. Cole. I like him more than you like him. But
I like
J.
J. Cole,
Cole,
for the record. Just
yeah,
just
yeah,
for
yeah, for sure. I'm just a bigger fan of his than you are. Yeah, J. Cole to me is a guy that gets everything out of his talent. I think he strikes me as a guy that studies the craft. He strikes me as a guy that wants to get better and takes the necessary steps to do so. He's a historian of hip hop, right? And kind of like, Dre would watch film. I think J. Cole understands kind of the lineage of hip hop. And I think, there's no stats in music in the same way that there are in football. But, J. Cole has a body of work now. He has a discography now that you can line up against other artists and say, look, this guy can stand next to these guys and feel like he's in that same room. So, yeah, I think if I were to say one guy that comes to mind is like the Jerry Rice of music, J. Cole would be the first guy that comes to mind for me. And this may be a little unfair, but if we're going with someone that's kind of like Randy Moss, part of me wants to say Lauryn Hill, because although Lauryn Hill's album is incredible, it's one of the best albums ever, it feels like there was that she left something on the table by just not making more music.
mm,
And I don't know if that's totally fair, but I don't know. It's disappointing that we don't have more from Lauren. And there are parts of Randy's career that you're like, man, I wish you would have just gave me a little bit more here. But at the same time, Randy's best season with the Patriots, I think is the best season. It's the best season I've ever seen from a wide receiver. And the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, again, it's one of the best albums ever. So
yeah.
it's hard to say that either one of them came up short because they have
Yeah.
these bodies of work that are so incredible.
But I also don't think even with the 85% qualifier, I don't think anybody would ever qualify Randy Moss's career as coming up short in any way, right? He did everything that, I guess he didn't win a Super Bowl, did he? Because that Patriots team ended up losing to the Giants. But even without winning a Super Bowl, he had top 3 or top 5 receiver career of all time. at the least, right? That's where the conversation begins. He also, like to my point of like the 85% being more exciting, what Jerry Rice doesn't have is a verb named after him, right? Kids don't say I riced you, right? They say I mossed you because Randy Moss like was able to leave that type of impact on the culture, and there's something to be said for that, whether it's a lack of hard work or circumstances, maybe to get that kind of 85%, there needs to be that 15% wiggle room, or margin for that type of like genius to exist. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's excuse making, but I don't know.
And I don't want to say Randy didn't work hard. I wasn't there.
No, sure, of
You know
course.
what I mean?
Randy Moss is the placeholder for the archetypes that we're
Exactly.
talking about. Yeah.
I guess just sticking with that though, like you say, it's hard to say that his career came up short. And I agree. To me, he's the second best wide receiver ever. If you have the potential to be the best ever and you end up being the second best ever, did you come up short?
It's a good question. Good people content family. Let us know. Because no, you're right. It's a great question. And like, that's where the perspective comes in, of like, and this is where if Bill was here, we'd start talking about, what does it mean to master something, right? What does it mean to be
Yeah.
a true master of something? Does that scale slide depending on what your ability level is? Does it slide depending on what your expectations are, what others people's expectations are? There's a lot that goes into it. So I think that's part of why it's such a great question. And as we were talking about it, I was thinking about it a little bit more on the Jerry Rice side. I think part of what's so impressive about Jerry Rice is that he's become the greatest receiver of all time. And he actually was never particularly fast, right? He wasn't a fast receiver, which is like when a lot of people think of a wide receiver in football, Randy Moss included, one of the things you think of is like, guy's a burner, right? He can just beat the guy running downfield and score touchdowns, which is what Randy Moss is able to do so effortlessly. And then you like, what are the comps to music? So to me, I'm like, who's the Jerry Rice of music? To me, it's like it's Bob Dylan. That's my answer, is like Bob Dylan is the Jerry Rice of music, because like Jerry Rice, who didn't really have speed, which is what someone would consider a pretty core part of being the best receiver of all time, Bob Dylan did not and does not have what a lot of people would consider a good traditional singing voice, right? He doesn't have a beautiful, classically trained voice.
He doesn't have the vocal talent, right?
But damn it, if he didn't work himself into being one of the most important, arguably best, that's really subjective, but certainly one of the most important musicians, in contemporary music, which is kind of in the same stratosphere that Jerry Rice is playing in, right? As like the best or one of the two or three best to ever do it. So yeah, I think that's probably a better music comparison than I mean, I stand by what I said about Mac Miller, but I think like at Jerry Rice's level of impact and kind of like that comparison, I like Bob Dylan. On the Randy side or the other side for music, it is harder. I hear your point about Lauren and that kind of like one standout thing and wishing that there was more. I'd have to think about that one more, because that one's harder, I think, on the musical side. But like I think the one hit wonders, but like at the scale of like Lauryn Hill is probably where my head goes to, where it's like one iconic record setting historic thing and then not that sustained throughout a career, which is like, again, that's incredibly difficult to do. It's not a knock, but that's probably the comp that I would think of as well.
Yeah, it has to be someone who did legendary things in the space. Because Randy, again, I watched more Randy than I did Jerry just because of my age. Randy's the best receiver I've ever seen.
Sure. Sure.
The
It was
most exciting.
unstoppable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
was
mean, Randy
literally
was Randy. Like you said, he's a verb. So, like you said, it can't be a one-hit wonder. It can't be Fetty Wap. You know what I mean? Like it has to be somebody that had some real impact.
and impact in terms of results, but also like Randy changed how defense was played. He was part of the reason why pass defense rules were changed in the NFL to allow for more free flowing games. It's like that LeBron type, Steph Curry type, capital I impact, like you're changing the way the sport is played at this level, which is rare, that's like really hard to do. But anyway, great question. Great prompt for a little chat right there. That was fun.
For sure. All right, let's get into some music. Song of the week. How about I kick us off today?
Kick us off, my guy.
All right. So song of the week. I'm gonna go in a little bit different direction here. I'm gonna go with a DJ, some kind of DJ music. It's gonna be an artist that goes by the name of Nightmare on Wax, and the song is going to be "You Bliss." You know, I this isn't music that I typically get into, but it came across my laptop one day, and I dove into it a little bit, and I really enjoyed it. This song "You Bliss" takes me on a journey. When I listen to the song, I feel like I just did something revolutionary, which is an interesting feeling. The guitar on this song has like this 70s feel, and it feels like I'm in a movie set in the 70s. And again, I use the word revolutionary because it feels like a song that should be set in a movie that's about Black people fighting against the struggle of discrimination in the 60s and 70s. Nightmares on Wax does some interesting things with hip hop and techno and jazz blend. Um, and that combination turns this song into something really funky and soulful at the same time. So I would recommend that you take some time to listen to Nightmare on Wax if you haven't. This is probably a different one for a lot of our followers. A lot of our followers probably aren't into this music as much, but I would say take some time, take a listen to this. And again, my song of the week is going to be Nightmare on Wax, You Bliss.
I love it. I love the shakeup. Nightmares on Wax. Check it out, folks. Very cool, JB. We're always expanding our musical horizons here at Good People, and we love all different types of stuff. So that's a great one. Great shout. As usual, like I mentioned in our intro, I'm gonna take it back for my song of the week to another song that just always finds its way back into my rotation, an album that always finds its way back into my rotation, a group for that matter that always finds its way back. The group is the Gorillaz. The song is Some Kind of Nature featuring Lou Reed off of their 2010 album Plastic Beach. Just such a cool band. So much to talk about. I think in thinking ahead, I'm going to do songs of the week with both Blur, which is Damon Albarn's first kind of big band that he kind of came to prominence with, and with the Velvet Underground, which is Lou Reed's kind of most famous project from back in the day. Both just insanely talented people. This song is a kind of crazy blend. Like on paper, you wouldn't always think it would work, but then you get this perfect blend of Lou Reed's like, kind of monotone, like classic, iconic delivery, like almost simple speak talking, but then it gets blended with, firstly, anytime Damon's working with Gorillaz, I should say, it's going to be funky, and there's going to be this kind of like beautiful harmonization of voices. He just does such some orchestration and music. He's really, really talented, like I said. So you have that mixed with Lou Reed, and then you also just have this kind of like welling up of this like almost like techno grunge. I don't know. It like sounds dirty, but in a very funky and rhythmic way that like you just can't help but kind of bop to. And it fits with the overall kind of theme and vibe of the album, which is this like almost like apocalyptic funk techno thing. If you've never listened to Plastic Beach, it's a cool place to enter in for Gorillaz. If you liked Gorillaz, you'll enjoy going back to it. And if you like what you hear from Lou Reed on this, and you've never heard of Lou Reed or Velvet Underground, highly recommend diving in. Lou Reed is a absolute legend, unquestioned legend in music history, and a very influential person. Had a lot to give. So well worth a listen if you've never listened. If you've already listened, you know how great this song is and how great this album is. So go back and give it a shout, because my song of the week is Some Kind of Nature by Gorillaz featuring Lou Reed.
Lovely. Love it. I love the Gorillaz. That's a great band right there. I feel like there was a point in time where I got really into them and NERD, like kind of all at the
Sure.
same time.
Sure. I think that was, yes, definitely. And what I didn't mention, but one of the cool, unique things about Gorillaz is, it's like a multimedia band, I suppose. It's like Damon singing usually, um, but then digital characters, like almost like video game characters that they've done concerts where they've done projections on the wall, they've done holograms, they've done all sorts of cool shit that just pushes the boundaries on like what a band can mean. And a lot of this stuff was being done in like 2008, 9, 10, before things like holograms or other tech that's become a little bit more ubiquitous was really out there. Super, super cool band in person. They also happen to just, in previous projects, other iconic albums, some amazing hip hop collaborations with not a traditional hip hop band. He works with Del Funky Homo Sapien a lot, works with De La Soul. Most Def is featured on Plastic Beach as well. Bobby Womack, not hip hop, but just funk musicians. Really cool musical space that they play in. So yeah, I always find myself going back to them because NERD, it's a great shout, Jordan. A different era of Pharrell that a lot of people may not remember or be familiar with, but that was a time, that like 2010 time, there was like an alt hip hop, funky something going on for sure.
Yeah. NERD was great, man. I remember the song Sooner or Later was one of my favorites. Sooner or later, it all comes crashing down.
That's still to date one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. I was in high school and me and my friends went and saw at Staples Center, which is now crypto.com arena, but everyone in LA still considers it Staples. At Staples, it was Lupe who opened Epic, NERD, who was actually the best show of the night. They put on an absolute banger of a show. Rihanna, who came out and performed all the hits and just crushed it in this like arena setting. Kanye, glow in the dark tour, Kanye.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Formative night. It was pretty incredible. But like truly, like of all those incredible world-class performers, Pharrell and NERD stole the show. They were the best performance of the night. They were so much fun. So I'm glad you shouted them out as we're talking Gorillaz.
For sure. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, we've talked football. We've talked Jerry Rice, Randy Moss. Do you have any other thoughts before we close?
Oh man, great discussion points. No, the only thing I would close with, as we ride out here and continue to try and bring happiness and fun and interesting stuff into people's life is to just take care of each other. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. I live in a part of the country where ice and lots of the things that have been going on are directly happening in our community, and it's scary stuff. But the answer, I think, the solution, whatever the solution is going to look like, comes from community taking care of each other, supporting each other, loving each other, and being empathetic. Yeah, I know that doesn't really jive with anything that we've been talking about today, but it's always top of mind for me and us as we're doing this stuff. We don't want to just be a distraction. We want to, acknowledge the times that we're living in. So my last message for today is to love each other and take care of each other and support your local communities.
Yeah, that actually gets me into my final thought. We're coming off of the Grammys the other night, and I want to thank the artists that took a part of their time on that major platform to speak out against ICE and to speak up for the people that are being discriminated against in our country. I think it's extremely important. Artists and musicians and athletes, they're not the only people that should be speaking up against this, but they at times are people with the biggest platforms and the largest microphones. And I'm happy that a lot of them took the time to say something the other day, speaking out against ICE. And just piggybacking off of what you said, I think it's important that all of us that have a platform, no matter how big or small, take the time to speak out against the wrongdoings that are going on against people in our country, because it is a new form of terrorism that we're seeing, these attacks against people of black and brown skin here in America. And it's a terrible thing that's going on. And, David, I know you've done a lot in your community to help out and make sure that, people are being protected as well as you can. And I know it's something that we've talked about as a group that we want to make sure that we're doing our part as well moving forward. Again, thank you to everyone that has taken the time to speak out against those things, particularly at the Grammys the other night. That's all I've got, David, unless you've got anything else. Then We'll sign off for tonight. This has been another episode of Song of the Week. Thank you for listening. Peace.
You guys, thank you.